Speed. Sound production, take one.
There are many who would say that Steven Spielberg is a legend and that you could look at probably a dozen of his films and say maybe they are practically perfect. Well, today we have Christian Jessup joining us as we take a look back at practically perfect cinema. And over the past few years, I've spoken to several film critics, film lovers, and just film fans about what they consider to be a practically perfect film. And today, Christian Jessup's going to dive into Saving Private Ryan.
Heavy weapon or defilade below. I ain't got a shot. Pincer move, Parker! Target's 8 o'clock low!
Hello, welcome to Practically Perfect Cinema. Noel T. Manning II here, talking about films or filmmaker contributions that you feel fit that category of what's practically perfect. Old buddy, somebody I've known since he was a little wee buddy, Christian Jessup, a film lover, former co-host for Meet Me in the Movies, and also a film composer in his own right. We're really happy to have Christian Jessup. Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me be a part of this. Excited for it.
Yeah, me too. Well, when I put the plea out there, I was hoping you would join in because we've had such great dialogue over the years about different aspects of film, from being in a film class talking about it to just spending time, riding around to a movie theater waiting for a film or afterwards. So we've had some talks over the years. I know you and my son Thomas have also enjoyed plenty of film-related dialogue, and I was hoping you would spend some time talking about something music-related because you do have a background and a love for music. But I'd love for you to talk about that before we dive into your selection for Practically Perfect Cinema. Give us some background on where your love of film and maybe that film composing and sound came from as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, luckily my love for film and film music is so intertwined. It's kind of the same story. Really going back to as long as I can remember when I was a kid, whether it was watching the Disney Renaissance musicals or watching the classic Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, or even going back to like Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire, like some of the classic Hollywood musicals as well. Musicals were always playing in our house. And so I think just like from ever since I was a kid, that was just ingrained into me. Film and music just were intertwined. And for me, the films that were always most perfect in my mind were the ones where I loved the music. And so growing up, that was a part of it. You get a little bit older and then you're introduced to film scores. John Williams, I was obsessed with Star Wars, Indiana Jones, E.T., all of his classic collaborations with Spielberg and George Lucas. And then Hans Zimmer, you've got The Lion King, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Dark Knight trilogy. And so really just growing up, starting with those musicals that evolved into a love of film scores where even when there wasn't music being sung, I was always looking for the music. And that sort of culminated in a film which we'll talk about here soon. But when I was in high school, my orchestra conductor, Peter Strickland, he knew about my love of film scores, my dream of becoming a film composer, and he let me borrow my very first conductor score, which was Hymn to the Fallen from Saving Private Ryan. And so he was like, take this home for a week, whatever, bring it back, but just look at it, study it, do whatever you want with it. And I bought the single off of iTunes, had the conductor's score in my lap, and I must have just played that hundreds of times, following along. I just start at the top, like, all right, I'm going to listen this time to only the flutes and follow along with the flutes, and then just do the same thing, instrument by instrument. And so, like I said, my love of film and music has always been there, but, I will never forget having that very first orchestral score from him that I borrowed, and that really stuck with me. And, of course, so that made Saving Private Ryan a really big part of my love for film and film music.
Yeah, and Saving Private Ryan is the topic of today's Practically Perfect Cinema, film from 1998, and one that got a lot of critical and commercial success as well. And when I say critical, a ton of Oscar nominations for this, and ended up winning several Oscars, including for Best Director, Cinematography, Sound, Film Effects Editing, and Best Effects, Sound Effects Editing as well. And it was nominated for score. This is a film, John Williams, you mentioned, he had worked with Spielberg, who did this. They had worked 15 times before on other projects before they came to Private Ryan. And when you work with someone that often, there's this shorthand that kind of happens. Many times you just allow that other person to live and breathe who and what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that collaboration was so important here. Like you said, they'd worked together so much already. And so I think coming into this film, they really could have that open dialogue of what was needed here. And the importance here was restraint. I would never call this an underutilized score, but I would say it's an understated score. Williams knew, and I'm sure that was in collaboration with Spielberg, that he needed something different here. This needed to be a very in the background score. And again, that doesn't mean underutilized, that doesn't mean never heard, but it does mean it comes out when it's appropriate. And I think you mentioned even the Oscars recognized both the sound and the score's importance here. And I think that collaboration between Williams and Spielberg really helped bring that out in both aspects of knowing when to use music versus when to not use it.
Yeah, you talk about John Williams, you can't talk about film history score without mentioning Williams, and there are so many iconic themes that he has done that even if people don't particularly know the film, I'm talking about general audiences, they would recognize the score because those scores have become so iconic that they show up in so many different places. I was talking to Joel Winstead about Jaws and the Jaws theme. I said, even if you've never seen the Jaws movie, if you've been to an NBA game, you probably have heard that da-da, da-da,
Yep.
da-da. You've heard those two low notes over and over again because they've been utilized. And in sports especially, these themes show up in one way or another. Now, not particularly with the Saving Private Ryan theme, but just the impact of what Williams has done for film is astronomical, and your dog feels the same way. but Williams has just continued to live and breathe in this industry, and it's amazing that he's been doing it for so long and been recognized for it for so long, that he still finds a way, and going back to Saving Private Ryan, to do something that doesn't, for him, it's not one of these things where he's like, okay, I've got to show off. He's
Right.
like, let's let it be what it should be and what it needs to be for the film and for the audience.
Absolutely, and you're spot on, Noel. I think it comes down to intent, and I think both the director and the composer's intent here wasn't to show off, and I think with what Spielberg was going for, up to this point, this was arguably the most realistic, the most brutal, the most gritty depiction of war on film. And I think if we had gotten one of those classic Williams fanfares like we're used to hearing from him in so many films, that it might have done a disservice to what Spielberg was going for in his vision here. That would be a risk of glamorizing the brutality of war, and that's not at all what they wanted. And so I think you're spot on. Williams has very clearly made it known that he can write these memorable themes, but that's not quite what they were going for here. And I think that there's a real beauty to how they were able to show that restraint and match Spielberg's vision.
Thank you for joining us right here on Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, and after this quick intermission, we'll be back with more of our conversation with Christian Jessup talking about Saving Private Ryan.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hi, I'm Nikki Bliss Carroll, your host for Cleveland Connections, the show that explores what's happening at Cleveland Community College. Join us as we sit down with members of faculty and staff to discuss programs of study, upcoming events, and other exciting campus news. We'll have a new show for you each month on C19 TV, or you can stream us online at c19.tv. Tune in and connect with Cleveland Community College on Cleveland Connections.
Education is our most powerful tool to improve and change our world. Hi, I'm Rhonda Benfield, your host for School Matters. Join me for a new program every other week with information from and about the students and staff of Cleveland County Schools. Discover what our schools are doing to challenge students and help them reach their full potential. You can catch us on Spectrum Cable Channel 19 or stream us live on c19.tv.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, and if you are just joining us, we are in dialogue with Christian Jessup for Practically Perfect Cinema, the exploration of the film Saving Private Ryan. Let's get right back to that dialogue. Yeah, and the balance of that score and the sound design. I remember watching Saving Private Ryan for the first time at an early screening and just being so captivated and torn apart by what was happening with that assault sequence on Omaha Beach, where there is no music. It is that sound design, and I would say that this film modernized what we've come and probably revolutionized what we come to think about with war films now because of what it did specifically in that sequence. I mean, you feel like you're there on the beach, storming those beaches of Normandy, and you feel like almost the bullets are flying by you. I mean, that's how powerful it was. I remember the theater that I was in was a truly incredibly well done theater for sound design, and Spielberg is truly brilliant at finding people to make that happen. I mean, I think about Jurassic Park as another example of what he did with his folks with sound design and making that happen. And this one, absolutely, and the balance of that. Gary Ritstrom, I think, is the name of the one who worked with the sound design and sound effects editing. And that scene in particular it floored me. And a big part of it, why it floored me so much, is my grandfather was there in Normandy. Oh, and wow. Part of Patton's Third Army, and he, just seeing that was probably the first time that I felt I could even come close to having a glimpse into what he went through, because he told me, he said no one, if you've never been in a situation where you've been shot at and you've seen your friends die beside you, he said nothing can recreate that. He said, unless you've been there. But seeing this gave me a glimpse into, I think, what he had experienced.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for your grandfather's service and everyone like him. And I had the pleasure of seeing the re-release of Saving Private Ryan in theaters a couple of years ago, I think for the 20th anniversary. And it's a different experience. Like you said, the sound design, the sound mixing, you're in the theater and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in a war zone. And it just completely changes your outlook on an already terrific film, but that mixing is just next level. And I'd really love to talk about that first 30 minutes of the film, especially because I think that's a good microcosm of this great sound and music collaboration throughout the entire film, because a lot of people forget the first 4.5 minutes of the film are all score. There's no dialogue. It is purely John Williams' score and the visuals of this older man walking through this memorial graveyard. And, restarting the film, everybody always remembers that 20-25 minute sequence storming Omaha Beach. But I was really struck by, the introduction to this film. Williams is setting the tone for this is a very heroic but melancholic film that we're about to watch. And those first 5 minutes really set that tone. And then to your point, we zoom in on this older man's eyes, the music starts to slowly fade out, and the waves, the sound design of the waves on the beach start to fade in. And that's when we lose all music for the next 20, 25 minutes. And like you said, the bullets going overhead, the waves crashing. I mean, it is just chaos. And the way that they're able to create that through sound design is next level. And then, 25 minutes later, after this brutal scene, we start to zoom out and see the tragedy of the consequences of what just happened on the beach. And Williams' music slowly comes back in. So you've got this very real, very brutal war scene that shows you the atrocities of war, but then the music fades in and really like pulls on your heartstrings to remind you of the individual sacrifices that we just saw and what that adds up to. So, I mean, that first 30 minutes really is just shows the director's vision for the whole film of like, we're going to very carefully choose when the music shows up, and then we are going to have terrific sound design and sound mixing to sell you when the music is gone.
I think a truly incredible director like Spielberg is, for audiences, I don't think audiences truly realize what's happening because it is done in such a way that feels just organic. That when the score is not there, you're not missing that a score should be there to kind of pull on your heartstrings or to make you feel a certain way, or to lead you to feel a certain way, because it doesn't need it. I also think about another Tom Hanks film. It's not a film that is a Spielberg film, but Tom Hanks, Castaway.
Yeah.
There's the whole section of when he's on the island. It's all ambient sound.
90 minutes, 2 hours, you go without score.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Like you said, I don't think people appreciate how difficult that is for a filmmaker. As a composer myself, I've been on my share of films where there probably shouldn't be score throughout the entire film, but you kind of have to use score to cover up other flaws, whether that be like, the director's like, I don't think the actors are really selling it here, so I need your music to come in and sell it. Or like maybe the director's action isn't quite selling it, so he's like, I really need some like pounding music here. And so I've noticed on my films, the better films end up using my music less because they know when to use it and when they know when it's more impactful not to have it. And so like you said, Castaway, Saving Private Ryan, those films really show how talented and what a talent it is to be able to really utilize a film without having a score to kind of force the emotions on the audience per se.
And we all are familiar with the impact of what a good composer can do to a film. We all appreciate that and understand that, and that's why when we think about films, so many times there is the score that immediately comes along with it. We think about Indiana Jones. We think about that's kind of swashbuckling thing. Pirates of the Caribbean, another one of those that we remember that. Jaws, of course, we've already talked about that. But I think kind of the unsung heroes many times are those who were doing the sound design and the sound effects editing, because those are kind of the sounds that we hear and think about anytime. I mean, it's, you if you're walking in the backyard and you've just, had a big storm in the fall, you've got these leaves, you know you're going to be walking on leaves that crunch. So in a film, if somebody doesn't provide that crunch for you, something's missing, or you're like, oh well, yeah, of course there's a crunch there. You're walking, but that's the Foley that brings that to life. But I think that many times we forget the importance of all of those different elements of what brings a film together. It is a small miracle that films are able to happen and to live and breathe, and even for bad films, there's a lot of work that goes into them.
Oh, absolutely. And it really is such a team effort. It's easy to glance over in credits that can run 5-10 minutes long, but when you look at all the names involved, everyone truly has such an important role, because to your point, if you're missing the crunch of a leaf as you walk, or the sound of crickets in the background, or wind howling, you aren't thinking about that not being there, but you notice like something's off here. And so, yeah, like with Saving Private Ryan, all the way from the battle scenes where you've got a lot going on to just whenever they're walking across France and you just hear the sound of walking on grass, the wind howling, you might hear some fights or yells in the background. All of that's really working together to create this soundscape. And it's little things like that that's just so easy to forget about, but that you immediately notice if it's not there.
Absolutely. The film is Saving Private Ryan. We're talking about the sound and the music on Practically Perfect Cinema. Any other thoughts you want to make sure you cover as we begin to wrap up this segment?
Yeah, so I mean, we really have covered the importance of music and sound here. Again, Williams just really created a masterpiece. I love this main theme that plays throughout the film. It's built around what's called a pedal note, which is a note that really the bass note doesn't change. It hovers for a long time on just the same note. And I just found that so interesting because, you know, he's creating a heroic sound a lot of times with the horns, but it's all kind of just hovering around that same note. Whereas like a lot of these grander themes, there's lots of chord changes, key changes, the melodies all over the place. And I think that's part of what keeps it subtle, but also to my previous point, it keeps it melancholy. That heartache is always present. And I think that was such a tough line to walk for Williams and Spielberg, is even when there is music here, you want to be careful to both show the heroism, but also not to glorify what's going on. I think he wanted to show that these are very real sacrifices. And so I've always been a huge fan of that theme. And then as I mentioned before, the end credits play an original theme that Williams wrote that wasn't present in the film called Hymn to the Fallen. You've got just this gentle choir singing. You've got strings, woodwinds, horns. It's just all working together. And after you've sat through this 2+ hour film, to just have that quiet, thoughtful music that he calls a hymn, you know, like it's a very solemn ending to the film, to just sit there while the credits roll and hear this choir singing a hymn that Williams wrote in honor of those that lost their lives in battle. And so, again, just hats off to Williams, to the entire sound team, and to Spielberg for really knowing when to utilize both. It all just comes together to be practically perfect for me. Awesome. Christian
Jessup, our guest right here as we talk Practically Perfect Cinema. So, Christian, if anyone out there wanted to follow your work and explore and see what you have done or what you're doing, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to christianjessup.com. I've got, some interviews with me. I've got a lot of the music I've written in the past. And then you can also follow me on any social media platform. It's at Jessup_music. So you can find me in both of those places. I'm always trying to update it, show what I'm working on. And, every once in a while I'll have some nice film analysis like this too.
Thanks again to Christian Jessup for taking the time to be with us right here on Meet Me at the Movies for this Practically Perfect Cinema flashback special looking at the practically perfect film of Saving Private Ryan. We invite you to join us each week right here on C19 TV as we explore films and every aspect of cinema that we can cram into 30 minutes. Until next time, for Meet Me at the Movies, I'm Noel T. Manning II, and that is a wrap.
Many films to view until we meet again. Next time we see you, we'll gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.
She gets her hair from her mom, her eyes from her dad, and her drugs from her home medicine cabinet. Fact: more people die from drug overdoses than from car crashes or gun violence. And over 50% of those deaths are from prescription drugs. Prescription drug abuse is preventable. 1. Secure and take regular inventory of our medications. 2. Dispose of unused or expired medications. 3. Share this message with others. Be aware, don't share, lock your meds.
Cleveland Community College has identified strengthening online learning as the topic for its quality enhancement plan. We're calling it SOUL. SOUL's 5-year implementation plan is focused on continuous improvement of online courses and promoting student success. We're excited for you to take this journey with us.
What's up, guys? Luke Combs here. North Carolina has a major problem with litter on our roadways. We all have to do our part to clean up this mess. And just remember, trash belongs in a can, not on our roads. Don't trash North Carolina.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
As Cleveland County's premier event facility, LeGrand Center is the ideal location for any event. The LeGrand Center is located 45 minutes west of Charlotte, 45 minutes north of Spartanburg, and just a little over an hour east of Asheville. Whether you're a small business looking for a place for an off-site meeting or a bride looking for that special location for her wedding, LeGrand Center is the perfect place for you.
Here in Cleveland County, many children struggle to develop due to the lack of guidance and shortage of positive role models. At the Boys and Girls Club, we make it our team's mission to aid your child in becoming a better student and, more importantly, a better person with a brighter future.
When your child comes to the club, you can be assured they are being guided in a manner that is beneficial to the growth as an adult that is visible in their lives. Please consider giving your child the opportunity to be the absolute best they can possibly be.
Please support your local Boys and Girls Club today.